Hi everyone and welcome to my channel Rainier Books, where I discuss books that I have read, where I curate lists of books for several topics from several countries, where I speak about awards, and sometimes I do vlog when I'm traveling around. I am based in the wonderful city of Stockholm, Sweden, home of the Nobel Prizes except the one for peace, location of the ABBA Museum, and also called the Floating City by Nobel Literature Laureate Selma Lagerlöf in her famous book about Niels Holgersson in 1909, The Floating City. The past is not just that which happened to you. Sometimes it is that which you just imagined. Well, we all like to reminisce things that have happened in the past from time to time, when the grass was greener and the ice cream tasted so good. Sometimes we dream of our loved ones that have passed, and yes, we would like to be back. We'd like to be back on that concert again so many years ago, and we would tell that girl or boy what we really felt for her or him. And maybe everything would have been different in our lives, wouldn't it? Well, back to a time when the answers were easier and climate change was a word we would not have understood. Yes, the past is certainly the topic of Georgi Gospodinov's novel Time Shelter that won the International Booker Prize of 2023, the first Bulgarian novel ever to win. But also the present and the future is the topic of Gospodinov's book. And it was also the first Bulgarian novel I have read in my entire life. Like me, you might not have heard of Georgi Gospodinov before you heard about his book, although you could have and I could have too. In 1999, he published his debut novel, Natural Novel, that was translated into 23 languages, and he got acclaim from outlets like The New Yorker and The Times. The Guardian in London called the book both earthly and intellectual. Georgi's second novel, The Physics of Sorrow, made his name even more widely known, and he both received a bunch of literary awards like the Jan Michalski Award for Literature in Switzerland, but this book also helped him to get residencies, to research, and to write. The original version of Time Shelter came out in 2022, the year when Georgi Gospodinov was even nominated for the Nobel Prize. And, not a wild guess, after having read Time Shelter, he might be nominated again. The book was translated into English by Angela Rodell, who has also translated The Physics of Sorrow. The original title is Vremvešiše, Time Asylum, and I hope my Bulgarian was somehow correct. There is no such term as time shelter. We all have heard of a bomb shelter, yes, about cottages in the mountains and the Alps or the Rockies, where you can take shelter in the case of a thunderstorm or in hard rain. Hard rain's going to fall. A shelter is something that protects living beings, mostly humans, sometimes animals, from a threat. In this case, the title already suggests that a time shelter protects people from the passage of time. The book has a narrator. He is unnamed. He is Bulgarian, born in 1968, like the author Georgi Gospodinov, and he is a writer, just like the author of the book. And he might even have made up the other character. The other character is a man named Gostin. Also, he is Bulgarian. Gostin seems to be a geriatric psychologist, or he has knowledge in the topic, who comes up with the ideas to build a hospital for people who suffer from Alzheimer or another dementia. A house where sick people who have forgotten where they are and who they were can revisit their very, very special private memories of forlorn times. On one floor, Gostin has recreated the 1950s and the 1960s in every detail. On the next level, the 1970s. The 80s and 90s are planned and developed, but will come later when that generation falls sick with dementia. There are a lot of references to a famous novel about a sanatorium in Switzerland in the beginning. This one is high in the mountains surrounding the little town of Davos, Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. First, there are people in the book who suffer from dementia, who can revisit the past in Gostin's clinic, that is finally so successful that other clinics all over Europe and then all over the world follow. And slowly, a vast majority of people want to revisit and relive the past. They want to go back in time. In all European countries, they will finally hold referendums where the people can choose, where they can decide to which decade the whole country wants to go back to. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that wonderful? You might ask, when everything was better, when the answers were easy, and when the questions not so complicated, when it was not Brussels that made decisions about people in Scotland or Wales or England, but London. Together, the people would make their country strong again. They would make their country safe again. They would make their country wealthy again. And yes, they would make their country great again by simply returning to the best decade of their history, excluding the future, but continuing in a time loop. Nationalism is prevalent in this new world. People do not wear jeans or other modern outfits. They return to their national outfits like in those good old days of the past. Georgi Gospodinov dedicates a larger part of the book to describe how Bulgaria is changing and then moves from one country to another in Europe. From Italy to Spain to the Czech Republic to Germany, Sweden, France, and so on. The politics of eternity, as Professor Timothy Snyder of Yale has coined it, has won over change, over new mindsets, over the politics of inevitable change, over inevitability. Gospodinov's novel has now turned historical, but mostly philosophical. He writes about the passing of time, about our nostalgia for the past, and about the dangers that lure around us when we glorify the past and when we neglect the inevitable future. Earlier this year, Georgi Gospodinov held the keynote of the conference Concealing the Truth, Disinformation in Southeast Europe, that was arranged by the German Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. That was in May of 2023. Please let me quote some paragraphs of this really heartfelt, intellectual, and remarkable speech. We felt the first shock when strange conspiracy theories brought a president to power in the USA who looked as if he had sprung from a hopelessly outdated TV show program. Yet he promised to make America as great again as it once was. Until then, all American presidents had spoken of the promise of the future, but he allowed his supporters to become intoxicated with the past. And he won the elections with it, says Gospodinov. And he continues, the strongest shock was Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Putin's aim was to rewrite the past in preparation for the attempt to make the historical phantasm a reality at some point. Putin's view of things will not disappear, even when the guns fall silent. Propaganda wars always last longer than the real battles. There is no ceasefire in them, and no armies are sent home. In his speech, Gospodinov developed a wonderful thesis why it might be, yes, it might be, dear booktubers and booktube lovers, literature that can be an antidote to the fake news and social media that poison our societies and create huge divisions between people. He writes, or he says, when literature makes readers empathize with characters, it awakens in them the ability to empathize. In today's invisible war against ideology and disinformation, in a divided world where the production of hatred and enmity has become an industry, empathy is vital. Emotional intelligence beats social stupidity. Where it teaches us all an individual view of the world, it prevents a possible mass psychosis. Today the mood is doomsday. Pessimism is rampant. Corona pandemic, climate change, energy crisis, migration, and war in Ukraine are the keywords. It is easy to pick up on people's fear and loneliness, their confusion, and their despair. In the long term, Gospodinov says, it is more important that we focus on things that point to a better future in the long term, that we positively influence young people and invest in their education, that we encourage their critical thinking, their ability to analyze, to reflect, and to empathize. Dear friends, Time Shelter is a book about the current status of the world, about the seductive pull of the past, when everything seemed to be better, when everything seemed to be easier. It is a very, very timely book, a reflection on where humanity stands today and what threatens it. It shows that ultimately we cannot go back to the past, even if people would like to suggest that we can. It is never about making any country great again, but about shaping the future in the face of major challenges. Gospodinov has written a well-deserved International Booker Prize novel, and when someone like Nobel Prize laureate and winner Olga Tokarczuk from Poland blurbs your book by simply saying the most exquisite kind of literature, well then, you know that you did something right. Well, read this book, think about it, and believe in the power of literature. If you like this video, slap me a like, write a comment down below when you read Shelter by Georgi Gospodinov. And if you want to read it, it's a great novel. If you read other stuff, if you read other stuff by Gospodinov, please let me know. And I hope to see you very soon on this amazing and beautiful channel. I wish you a happy evening. Goodbye from Stockholm, Sweden. Hej då, as we say here. Or in Bulgaria, they say do vijdania.